reflections of past dry times and agricultural impacts in Alaska. You can go to the next slide, thanks. And we start here, like, why do we look back? We start here because drought looks very different in different parts of the US and in different parts of the world. We are loving being here. We had great discussions and learned so much on Monday, just really about how drought can affect people in ways that the drought monitor authors or anybody might not have been thinking about in the past. So it helps us to hear these discussions, but overall, it's also just a nice place to start a conversation. If we want to think about how to monitor and manage drought, sometimes if we go back and look at how drought has affected us in the past, it helps us think and build on what we've learned and help us do a better job in the future. So those are kind of our two purposes for why we're going to start with looking back at drought. So what we're going to do, we're going to start right in. Hopefully everybody had enough coffee. Be ready to participate. What we're going to do is jump right in and start and do this in a small group discussion. And what I'm going to ask you to do is think about in your own experience. So some of that may be shorter experiences, might be longer term experiences. Thinking back to what years do you remember in this region, in this area, as being dry enough to affect crops or livestock here? And as you're thinking about that, maybe also think about, and you could maybe make a note on that sticky, like how was it dry? Was it dry during the winter? Was it a lack of snow? Was it dry during the spring and summer, during the growing season? Like, kind of what did that year look like? So we're going to ask you to put that on a sticky note. If Deb can dip them open, otherwise we won't. And then on a second sticky note, thinking about that year, what crops are you thinking about? Which crops do you remember being affected during the drought, or livestock? Because I know, especially in this area, there's such a really cool wide variety of crops that you all are working with and that people are growing. So give us an idea of what crops you're thinking about, how they were affected. And then if you can, I'll think about that experience. And we say dry enough to affect crops and livestock. We're not going to ask you to say, like, was it how severe of a drought was it? Dryness can be experienced in a lot of different ways. So there aren't any right or wrong answers here. Just where did you see dryness happening? And then did you actually see, like, during that year or years that you're thinking about, what did farmers and ranchers have to do differently? Were there things that they did? Were there things that you wished you could have done or might have done? And so that would be on like a third stage, kind of three levels. And for folks online, we want to invite you to do the same thing and add to the chat. And maybe think about and maybe put your comments together in one comment so we can see the year linked with what crops were affected and what people had to do. But go ahead and you can put that in the chat. And we're just going to spend a little time letting you all discuss in small groups. And then we're going to stick the years. Like, some of you may come up with the same year. That's great. We'll stick those together, right? And kind of put those experiences together. We're going to put that up here on the whiteboard and just kind of take a look at what dryness in agriculture has actually looked like in the past. Here. So feel free to group up in like 3 to 4 people, 2 if you want to just get with your neighbor. And let's take about 10 minutes. Use the marker, please, because it shows up better. Yeah, the marker. Yeah, plenty of markers. We got plenty of markers.
Two of us.
Choose fine.
I'll find a different.
Yeah. You'll grab it.
Hot and dry all summer. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah. Like
Which they
never happened.
It started summer with the.
Yeah, sorry. I'm Austin. I know it's climate. I'm Ben. I was for cooperation. I co-own
This year.
yeah, and partner's been growing here since 2015. I found our farm.
I think I'm our manager will be at the incident.
No, sorry, Alaska Pacific University is in Anchorage.
Rain
It's my
all
campus.
night, and then the sun would get up and the sun would be out.
Yes, yeah, so it's a farm campus, outdoor education. And we have a production farm and then a bunch of education programs.
My name is Christine. The state of Alaska, I do this receipt program, so my of experience in variety, it's like. But I know that was.
Not even know.
Trying your. Extreme drive.
Well, yeah, I'm curious to hear
But I
like
could still
other
go out
people's
there
experience
and
this year. We were fine. And I was 22. I was like, people being impacted. I feel for now, but it was the first year that like I was watering so much. Usually I won't hear it. No, I think it was 3 days. This year, it's like so much that I want to that. And then my pressure coming in, like eating meats, like water.
Amazingly, I did us
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess.
No, no, Right. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I mean, even like farm work,
I don't think it.
2019 is back there. Like, so much.
Yeah.
Every day. I never really thought about that as a.
Yeah. Yeah. About every third year.
Yeah. It's always good.
Yeah, it's not every summer.
You know, for sure. Every single one of my own is looked at a safety.
Yeah, I remember 2019, we had camps. And there was like small camps all outside because of the quality. But yeah, it's close to.
Oh, what you've done, you're like a pusher, yeah, more.
I know farmers in the area. Yeah, don't have these companies. Pretty happy on their operations, especially. This is 2019 too, when the dryness was coinciding with like seeding. Like farmers waiting for transplant.
Yeah, I mean,
Or direct feed crop.
folks online have started putting their years.
Until.
So as you start, as you get to a point in your conversation, we can go a couple more minutes, but get to a couple point in the conversation, if you'd like to bring up your sticky notes and start putting them up here kind of, and we'll see where we can group years together where people might be talking about the same years.
So bring them up there, you guys?
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Like high funnels, and that, so that, like having more control, does that mitigate extreme presets?
It definitely feels like extreme. I haven't noticed is that I just like how much water.
Okay, so rate it. Yeah, so you have your existing headers, how-
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps us like. Qualities and stuff. We have to get pretty battered.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's flowers especially like water damage.
Oh,
A big thing, but I haven't noted spring drop.
Most of
flowers. So
Yeah.
we can have spring.
Probably, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't noticed enough how to like make a direct connection. Sure.
And others and. Balance, and if it doesn't have enough spring, it's water in the spring, it's never.
Rainwater. It's have a lot of the. Relative. Breezy and warm.
Yes.
Yeah, it's expensive.
How much does the like previous winter?
Just a quick note, I forgot to bring down the release forms, if you population do not want your photo and are very small circulation. Of like 5 people who would.
Is that wrong? Year where everybody was buying air conditioners and.
Well, 2019.
So.
That was
Was has
Was the stock guys.
I remember while we were going, just totally anecdotal observation. It seemed like we get like one of those hot, sunny, nonstop summers, those cloudy, rainy quality. So
Yeah.
we're lining up 2050.
All right, are we,
That's for me to say.
is anybody still adding things we're getting? That's good. So we're gonna focus mostly on kind of the 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. I want to note. No, you're right. That was my first one. It's nice to start. Okay. Some experiences going back to the 1950s. Whose was that? Okay, so decades in Matsu. So all crops. You want to say any more about what you're just seeing? Periodic dryness,
No,
Throughout.
constant dryness.
dryness.
Yeah, one
And
of the
this
things that
specific
we
in this-
measure at the experiment farm is, we got an official weather site, so we're measuring precipitation, we're also measuring potential evapotranspiration and crop cover. And from that, we do a simple water balance in the soil. And long-term averages from the 1950s on, starting May 1st to September 30th is always negative. Even all the precipitation we got last fall is not enough to bring it positive. So that means the only irrigation water or snow melt is going to supply water for high value crops, which is mostly home gardens, peonies, things of that sort. Everything else is dry land. And when you start doing that, you start reducing quantity and quality of your crops if you don't get paid.
So can I ask, so with some of the more recent years being mentioned up here, do you see a difference in those droughts?
Perhaps a little more early in the spring.
Okay.
At least for the past 20 years, is greater.
So
soil
drier in
moisture
the
lock
spring?
early in the spring from May until about August.
Okay. So then if we kind of talk about 2017, 2018, 2019 as different distinct dry years, or as sort of just like an ongoing, like did it get wet, dry, or wait, like, or is this just kind of a dry period that maybe we talk about together? So tell me about what crops you've seen affected during those years and how they were affected. What did we see going on during those years? You can tell me what's on your notes. I just can't.
Well, I recall 2017 as being extraordinarily hot the whole time through, and Alaskans were kind of freaking out because we were like in the 90s here, and it was uncomfortable. Alaskans don't have air conditioning, and so
Was it hot enough to affect crops too?
yeah, it definitely was.
Okay. Any specific crops that you remember? Are they?
All I grow are potatoes.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
yes.
but potatoes are pretty sensitive to heat during.
Well, it's a huge interest for research right now, especially out of like Texas, and everything is drought resistant varieties.
Yeah.
So some do great, some do poorly.
Okay. All right. Other crops that people remember being affected during those years?
I mean, hay, like that's the huge thing. And that's what's going to trickle down effect to all of our livestock being like people are pulling their livestock right now because they can't get hay for So I think that, especially this year, that's where
That's
what
been a
we've really
problem this year?
noticed. I mean, I grow vegetables too, and like seedling, like early, like spring stress with seedlings is just it. Your first few sessions of brassicas are usually pretty stressed, and that leads to lack of disease resistance and also just poor quality crops.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so are these grown on a bigger scale? Are they irrigated?
Yeah, I mean irrigation, but I mean we grow on a pretty like a smaller like market garden scale, and irrigation. There's irrigation systems, but those have limitations. And if it's not an efficient system, you're basically spending all day trying to irrigate your crops.
Okay.
And there's a lot of other stuff to do in the spring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you have a great irrigation system, I know growers around here, vegetable growers around here, had a great year because of the heat, and they had really awesome irrigation systems. So that's wonderful, but those are really cost prohibitive.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Just based off of that, I didn't put this on. My next door neighbor has a really nice permaculture garden, market garden. Couldn't make it, so I'm channeling her. She has been putting in first IBC cubes, the 300-gallon tanks, and now this year she put in, I think, the 2,500-gallon cisterns on the top of a hill. So she's been doing drip irrigation on a timer system, and she has a well, so she just pumps everything up to that. So she's been expanding kind of year by year with how much water she needs to store. And one of the things she did was she put in a big pond, partly for have enough water for fire protection, and it almost went dry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think she's just been kind of expanding how you store water to do that drip irrigation.
Yeah. And does that help by pumping it out of the well where that the capacity might be lower? She can pump over a longer period of time and have that water stored.
I'm not sure,
Okay.
but we had we have these wet periods and dry periods, so I assume that comes into it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So she's trying to probably pull more,
But certainly not enough
store it.
Enough rain coming down to manage that.
Yeah. Okay. And livestock wise, hay wise, is that grass hay? Is that
Like
alfalfa?
Timothy.
Grass hay, Timothy grass. And is that irrigated?
Typically around here, no.
Okay.
Which is not usually an issue.
Yeah.
But it's become more of an issue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And if you don't have hay, you can't just like truck it in.
People are, but
Yeah,
it's
it's really
really expensive.
Wow.
Oh yeah, we're bringing it up from Washington this year. But it's very expensive.
Yeah. Okay. And what are their options if they have to destock? If they have to sell livestock?
A lot of people are just calling their animals. I mean, if you look at the like Facebook pages, like the
Really?
Alaska Farm and Food, like people
Yeah.
are trying to sell animals every day.
Really?
Yeah, which is going to lead to issues in the next. I feel like going to continue to be a trickle down effect over the next few years.
Yeah.
Because we don't have breed stock, we're not going to have breed stock.
Right.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. Any notes on any other crops during those years? The 2017, 2018, 2019? Anything that I'm missing maybe out of the?
This might be kind of a market garden geared group here.
Yeah, which is great. That's really very much of interest.
There's
to
more
us.
diversity.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
things did okay, some things suffered.
Yeah. So things that, crops that liked it hot, warmer, maybe did a little bit well. Does that, if it's a market, in a market gardening sense, does that, are there effects on how you're able to market? Does it affect the timing of when things are available or when things expect things to be available, or does it affect you on the marketing side at all? More on just being able to get enough crop to take it to the market.
yeah, I think it does. Sorry.
Oh, no, yeah, I mean, there's other farmers in the area who, if you don't have a great irrigation system, like Phoebe was saying, we're waiting to put out their transplants this year.
Yeah. Okay.
Or waiting to seed. So things that require like transplanting or direct seeding, whether that's vegetable crops or flower crops, or like small grains and cover crops. Like we wanted to cover crop this area this year. We don't have a large enough sprinkler system to like provide overhead to, give germination water for that. And ended up like just not fitting that in early in the season until it started raining in late July and
Never stopped.
never stopped raining. And by that point,
You
like,
got like a double
there's
whammy
not
there,
many,
you.
there's not many like growing days
your window's
left,
short.
and so that like definitely impacted us. And that wasn't for a production crop for us, but like farmers down the road who don't have as good of a well,
Right.
definitely impacted when they put their crops in.
Yeah. Okay. And I heard, sorry, I've already, somebody mentioned like just the stress, which can then more insect damage. I'm wondering, are there quality issues that you would associate with dry years in particular, or is that more on the wet side?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I think one of the things that jumps out to me is even just like the harvest side of things. Like we, market for a lot of the market gardeners here, farmers here, like a lot of us grow like little baby greens and all these things. And, you don't have a good wash and pack station, like then you're having to like harvest things very early in the morning. And sometimes you have to get crops in, and the quality quickly degrades as soon as you're getting it, as soon as you're harvesting it.
Sure.
But I think I think you're missing out on a lot of people rely on those like early successions of like brassicas and other root crops. And I think typically a lot of those successions either get just, you're not able to seed like Ben was saying, or you just have not as good yields. Like I think all of everyone's brassicas this spring were like diminished.
Yeah.
Carrot harvest in the fall
Yeah.
too, right? Like
Yeah.
germination of carrots in this area
Sure.
has been rough the last few years, I feel like, based on spring water
Yeah.
constraints. We were talking like on our farm, this is the first year that we had water competition between irrigation and wash and pack.
Yeah.
Where
Oh,
we have a very good well. Usually I don't have to irrigate on harvest and pack days because like there's enough moisture, but I was watering almost around the clock this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I wanted to water on harvest and pack days, but I didn't have enough water or pressure to be able to do a good job doing that while irrigating as well. So I had to figure out like we're in a good position and figured out some other ways to manage that time and resource, but like certainly was impactful.
You also mentioned cover crops. Can I ask what cover crops you're using, or that people in growing vegetables, what cover crops are also maybe part of the system? How that might be effective.
Curious to hear from everyone, but we often see something like oats or peas, just like in either after a succession of something comes out, or just like fallowed for the whole year, like oats and peas, and that's what I wanted to put in spring for that area.
And so
We've
just getting
done
that
some
germinated.
variations of that, but yeah, getting it germinated.
Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up? So you wanted to put that in, put that aqua in
Yeah, we didn't know that.
because of the dryness?
Yeah, among other like farm timing constraints.
Sure.
Right?
It's
Like,
everything like
yeah. Once we didn't put it in because it didn't rain, then other things happened.
Yeah. Okay.
It also could be that the kind of extreme situation we experienced this year might become more common.
Yeah.
And so
The
being,
extreme between dry and then wet. Is that what you're thinking?
yeah,
Yeah, because I feel like you were mentioning like, well, maybe some of the other heat tolerant crops did well. And that it's true, but also like when you don't have sun for like 2 months, the tomatoes that you put into your high tunnel don't ever ripen. And so then you just have, it's not great on either end.
Yeah, you're right. That makes sense. Good. A comment back
Yeah,
there.
this is more kind of a forestry product thing, but I have a
Forestry.
little plot, where I've been growing chaga.
Growing what?
Chaga. It's a tree fungus, grows on
okay.
birch trees.
All right. This is gonna be brand new for me.
So anyway, chaga will live 20, nobody really knows, 25, 30 years. They all died this year. And I have no idea. I took a bunch of samples and froze them, so I've not done the analysis, but they every one they just kind of rotted in place. And I can't. I've been a farmer for 45 years. And I can't remember a summer that's been constant.
That's interesting because I really see an explosion out in the woods of late.
And it kills birch trees.
Yeah, right.
And it is just blowing out of all the birch trees everywhere I walk, and it scares me. Those poor birch trees are getting killed from every direction.
The spruce too. The spruce are getting killed because of needle rust, because it was too rainy and humid. And a year or two before that, they were dying because there wasn't enough water.
Yeah. So they're
And
stressed.
so they're
then more
stressed and getting spruce
susceptible.
beetle infestation. So yeah, I was just shocked to see the red needles on the spruce around my place this year because it's raining. Why is this happening? You've got sap, fight the beetle. It's not beetle.
I should have said, are there, if there are folks online that want to unmute and add to this conversation, please feel free. You can also, Kaylee's doing an amazing job. We're getting a really complete, list here. Are there comments that have come up that I haven't seen in the chat that we want to make sure we add to that? Just
Amy
Verbally?
online noted that after the really hot summers, more producers and peony growers put in drip irrigation as a
Okay.
response. So I was asking more about the management.
yeah, so that's a good transition maybe to management. I mean, we've kind of heard some thoughts, but what have we seen all people doing in the past already or thinking about drought management responses, whether sounds like maybe being related to irrigation improvements. Let's see.
Maybe too, we have I don't know if it's a unique situation, but crops like peonies or chaga, these are things that take years and years to develop. And it's not like a soybean crop.
Great. Yeah.
And so the impacts last for decades.
Yeah.
Or, can completely ruin a business in a single season.
Yeah. Yeah. So a really bad year at the wrong time in its development will set you back years.
You have to have new resilient strategies maybe for those types of crops.
Yeah. Have you seen any other types of adaptations?
I've ended up mulching under my whole orchard.
Oh, okay.
The whole, I just can't take.
Yeah.
I haven't put a drip system in yet. I thought.
Okay. What year did you do that? Was there a certain year
I
that
actually started 2 summers ago, and then I went crazy this year. I poured mulch and then I of course on a larger scale crop thing, I don't think it would work maybe for an acre or something, but I used to have a couple 100 feet of carrots, and I always strip newspaper between the rows just to hold moisture because I'm gone so much.
So if I
any
can channel my
Yeah, go ahead.
neighbor again.
Yeah, do.
This was one thing she really wanted to talk about that I don't have details is she uses both animals, I think mostly pigs, of course she has chickens and stuff.
Okay.
To turn the soil and take the stumps out. And she rotates them. But she also does the cover cropping, and what she plants for a cover crop depends on what was grown there and what she plants for there. So she changes the cover crop depending on those factors. She says it's been tremendously helpful for managing the soil to hold moisture.
Yeah. So she's seen a real difference.
Real difference. Yeah.
Building organic matter.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How are the soils around here? Do they tend to hold water? Are they sandy soils? Are they loamy? Or
Depends on where you're looking.
is it a lot of variability?
Yeah.
Other thoughts on management that you have tried or that you've seen, or that seems like it would be appropriate for trying in this area? And if there's comments coming in from folks.
I'll echo the
Yeah.
water storage.
Yeah, tell me about that.
It's not something I've done, but like probably planning on doing,
Okay.
just for well constraints.
And is that because your well can pump a certain amount, does that vary throughout the year?
That seems pretty consistent, but
Okay.
I'm curious to hear what other people's wells are at, but like my experience with our well and other people that we know are farming is like
the rate of gallons per minute is decently low.
Okay,
In a lot of places in Alaska too, and so, yeah, just keeping a reservoir so that if there's a higher need at some point, being able to
Yeah.
reach into that.
is most of the irrigation, well, groundwater irrigation? Good question.
Not as good as like interior Alaska as much,
And what, say that again?
not as much like in interior.
Oh, okay. What, and that's in interior, you're saying it's,
Like more, like in Fairbanks, the wells have to be a lot of times very deep.
okay. Yeah, I don't think we heard as much about, well, some people had irrigation. I remember our conversation from 2 days ago. Yeah, we didn't talk as much about irrigation.
Yeah, a lot
for
of
sure.
them, they don't have a lot of the guys in Delta don't have
Yeah.
irrigation.
So. Is there anything that I missed that I should call out that's on the, as far as management on the June board? We kind of touched on a lot of the management. I think we can come back to that too. So I'm not gonna break you up into groups again to do this unless you want to talk to somebody, that's fine, but I'm curious. Maybe to spend a couple minutes thinking about, from what you've seen over the, between the late 2010s, this year, 2022, as far with drought in particular, what are your concerns? What are your concerns for your own operations or for agriculture in general in this area? Maybe I'll just give you a minute to sit with that. Again, if you want to talk to your neighbors so that you don't feel lonely in that thought, that would be fine. And then, write it down and write it on a sticky. That way, at least I know we're capturing it here. And, yeah, any color is fine.
Oh, no.
They like the still getting used to weather, but it seems like the patterns are like pretty long, and then once they change, they don't shift back. So like it was like hot and dry, and it didn't rain, and then it started raining, and then it stopped raining. It was like no balance.
Yeah,
it's like
dynamics of this American.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it gonna be?
16, but there's a little bit, but we did have like a constant throughout the entire growing season. But since that happened, hot and dry and wet season, there's been a
yeah,
And it doesn't seem like like 4 days of rain, 4 days of sun, 4 days of rain. It's like got 4 weeks, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. For longer. Is also maybe getting more extreme.
Yeah,
That's my concern. Yeah, I mean, as long as we can irrigate, we're fine, but it's like college, we can't water this.
They also use the buses there.
But when you think about it, I love it.
That's a lot of clothes.
That's what like how it's water and I just it's like get it.
Yeah, only because you don't right. If you pump it, we can
I don't know. I
what's that? Water. You know, water. Yeah, not talking about. And So even as we got closer to the drought, like it's still drought rate. I could have like
Started. Yeah, I think my concern is like curious. More.
Yeah.
Probably tied to water table, but. Increasing the events like. Make us feel that. I feel like I felt it in like small ways. Where it's kind of maybe diminishing.
Oh, yeah. Very nice. And my husband.
Been really impacted by wildfires. Lots of input. Local geographer, report, all these things that impact the very down. She wants to fail point, all of those are what. And then create a nice sense that are all better together. I don't want to stop.
No, I mean inputs.
Maybe start this time. I'm gonna go round robin and just let people share some ideas, but maybe start with other folks in the chat. Said any comments that we might want to start with? As far as concerns with for the future?
Amy, would you like to unmute and share with the group?
Not really. I was mostly having fun listening and typing things in. I was.
Hold on, Amy. Now we gotta work on. Hang on.
You try again, Amy? Could you share your statement again, Amy?
Oh, I was just saying that I'm enjoying listening to everyone and typing in, but unpacking after being gone for a week.
Well, in the chat, Amy shared about having reduction in hay and pasture yields without some sort of irrigation, which means more water usage.
Right, let's and if as more things come up, feel free to I don't want to leave them out, definitely, but maybe we'll just kind of circle around and what so you guys were talking together, what kind of concerns for the future with regard to drought, what are you guys thinking about?
Concerns about the water table if we stay in a deficit consistently. Now, if you can irrigate, you're fine, but that may not always be the case. As you're starting to irrigate more, there's concerns about water quality as well. As you get low, you get more silts, right? Stuff that comes up, and then just food security in general.
Yeah. Okay. You two work together.
Something that Phoebe mentioned earlier, talking about this for years is like irrigation systems can be really cost prohibitive and a state that, has a lot of food insecurity.
So the cost of irrigation.
And
higher shipping costs.
We're just setting up a good system that you can rely on. Pretty pricey. And what Jesse mentioned earlier, we talked a lot about just that extreme variability, like the extreme differences between spring and summer. And it seems like that's becoming more common and becoming the norm. And the wildfires that come along with that, I saw it on a lot of sticky notes, but like 2019, the wildfires were so bad, and I was living in Fairbanks at the time, and I mean, you can't see anything, you can't breathe. The plants definitely aren't doing very well. So just those kinds of changes, the wildfires getting worse, and then what's that going to do?
Thank you. Do you guys work together or individually?
Well, one of the things that we brought up, other than the need for irrigation for high value crops, is more of a socio-political response. For example, are we going to start to compete with households, residences, and businesses for that same water source in the water table? And if so, who is then going to have rights over everybody else? Are we going to institute limitations for home gardeners? You can't irrigate except for such and such a time, or no more irrigating lawns, things of that sort, in order to conserve.
Yeah. How about back in the corner? Did you guys work together? Or did you have a couple concerns for the future?
I just said, I think similar to what these guys said is concerns about more and more extended dry and extended wet, maybe in the same year, and how that could affect crops, whether they're going to go from bolting to root rot and harvest timing.
Additional?
Right, the drip system, the cost of watering. And then it's not, doesn't have to do with so much agriculture, but I've been trying to find out. I've asked geologists, I've asked subculturists, what is causing our birch trees, maybe to the root mass is all risen up out of the ground. People seen that? Does anybody knows what's causing it? But it's going to be the death of those trees because the roots for 3 to 6 foot diameter around it, the whole thing raises up and then they fall over. And
Where is this at?
Just about any place I go walking, and I hike quite a bit. You can see it that direction, this direction, that direction, yeah. All you can see it out here in the field trails and places. I live out Fairview Loop. I've seen it a little bit out towards Edgerton.
Just perch?
Just perch. And I've also, we just cleared another maybe half acre, so quite a few birch trees came down. And I always thought these birch trees at the tops were dying out. I thought, well, I don't know when we built how, usually you think it's nicking the roots, so it's killing off the tree. Well, we got the split in this wood and all this larval came out, and I Googled it, and it is birch bark borers, and they are big worms and they kill the tops of trees first. So I see a lot of that around. So I think all the birch are going, and I also see everywhere a lot of alder taking over, where the spruce are dying and the birch are going to be dead, and it's going to be an alder forest. That's the worry. I don't know. Maybe alder's good thing.
Alder willows are primary succession. They come in after fires, floods, anything. So
and it's
good. We have large trees die out. Those are the ones you're going to get the down.
Well, it's interesting you say that because we've gotten a lot of calls from homeowners for complaining that they mow their grass now and they've never nicked the birch.
How about back?
I think we all share one brain. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
We talked about variability in the weather.
Variability.
And then on their same line that, Natsu is high density, every house is well in a septic. And so we're all hitting that same water table that isn't monitored or regulated in any way.
Yeah.
Unless you're taking over 400 gallons a day.
Yeah.
For a lot of years, it's unknown. And on the birch, interesting with the forestry side of things, they often refer to it as birch malaise. And they think it's a response from the 2018-2019 droughts.
Okay.
And so you'll often see our birch right around here are all the top dead.
Yeah.
So the beetles are actually a response to that drought stress.
Okay.
And then they're a secondary attack. It's similar to spruce.
Yep. So that makes sense.
I don't know about the blue thing though. I don't know. So, but as far as the beetle side.
Interesting. All right. Thank you for sharing this. Oh yeah, you had some. Sorry.
Yeah, because I work for a village, and so I'm taking information back, and sharing some of that. One of the really important food sources is blueberries, and just none when there's that intense. It's just
the rain.
The rain.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, where do the bears go? I know down in Cordova if you get a low salmon year and a rainy bearing year, you've got a lot of bears in town. So, yeah, and then it's not specifically on the birch, but someone was telling me with all the rain that we had this year, as soon as the winds come, all those trees are gonna go. And up Buffalo Mine Road, so many trees went down last year, with the January windstorm, just matched it something.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Unless, I don't know if there were maybe other things that came up on the chat that we need to talk about. We're gonna wrap up this conversation right now, but I just see it as the first stage of the conversation throughout the day. And I mean, you can see we're trying to capture all of this. But as we, Brian's going to be talking with us next about what have been the past trends and maybe what we can look forward to in the future. So kind of keeping these concerns and what's at stake in mind, I think throughout our conversations throughout the day really helps us. And we'll have a chance to come back and have some more discussion about just needs and what we should be thinking about for the future towards the end of the day. But for now, I'm going to wrap up and turn it over to Brian. Do you have slides that we have already? All right, super. Thank you.